feels like conversation here. We should probably start the podcast.
I'm pretty sure they're already recording. They tend to be recording it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bodybuilding.com podcast. To my left, we have Heather Eastman.
Hello, everyone.
Across the way, here's Brandan Fokken, longtime Bodybuilding.com athlete, personal trainer, cover model, IFBB pro, Diametize athlete, corporate wellness coordinator.
I actually just left that position.
Did you? Yeah. Okay. I wanted to ask you about that. I think it's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
But first, also, you're a new father. We were just discussing with a 9.5 month old who's teaching you what true fitness really is.
He's teaching me what life really is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, he's the light of our lives. Mm-hmm. He is everything I thought he would be, and then everything more. You know, nothing can really prepare you for parenthood and being a father and everything until you have one, and then you have no idea what you're doing every day.
Every single day.
Yeah, that's the joy of it.
Except you know exactly what you're doing, which is you're bending over and picking the kid up all the time, bending over, picking everything up. So all of a sudden you're like, all right, do all that lifting I've done all these years, did it actually translate into me being a more functional human being?
No, no. But I am a smarter human being because he can stand on his own. So rather than pick him up straight from the floor, I make him crawl up my leg and stand up. So it's about a 4-inch difference, but that 4 inches, it's a huge, huge leverage point.
Now I will point out that Brandon's son also has 20,000 followers on Instagram. Yeah, I don't have to give up the details, but I discovered this yesterday, and I don't know, that struck me as kind of wild to have 20,000 in 9 months. That's a pretty steep trajectory.
Yeah. People. I mean, he's overdeveloped, I would say. I mean, he's ahead of everything. Size-wise, he's already measuring as big as a 2.5-year-old. And I mean, just everything else. He's got a personality. He's fun. His mom documents, I mean, a lot of his life, but at the same time, he was very difficult for us to have too. It's not something that we just got pregnant and here he was. You know, it was a long, drawn-out process to have him. So our appreciation for him is probably, accelerated a little bit more because of that. And because of that, Mom literally, documents his entire life. And people like to see him. I mean, he's got a great personality and he's fun.
Yeah, he's a happy-looking baby.
So, yes.
Cool. Now, and you've had a long and varied road through the fitness industry as well. If you go to bodybuilding.com, you can see Brandon's story and several of his workouts. But I wanted to talk a little bit about where this all started for you as well. As a kid, who were the icons that you looked up to?
As a kid, I've made it no secret. I had a real tough childhood, and because of that, I found myself fixated on characters like Superman, Hulk Hogan at the time. Because they were bigger in life and they were strong. And because they were strong, they were never hurt. And as a little kid, I went through a lot of stuff no little kid should have to. So I wanted that to be a part of my life. And along with that, they also did good with their strength. And that was something else that attracted me to them. But, there was a phase from probably 4 years old to about 8 that I tried to flex. In every single picture I took.
These are the Hulk Hogan years?
I was after it, man. And
years.
You could not convince me that I was not strong, even at that age. And it's something that stuck with me. I just continued on with it. And as I got older, at the age, I was a great athlete and played all sports. I moved around a lot, so athletics were how I made friends. And when I got to high school, I had grown faster than anybody. I could dunk a basketball, I could outrun anybody, but I was not strong at all. I could not bench press 100 pounds in my freshman year of high school. And the hierarchy of who's cool and who's strong is what you can bench press at that age. And, I got made fun of, and it's something I didn't want to continue to deal with. So I buried my head in Muscle Mag and Muscle and Fitness, and that's where Mike O'Hearn actually came into my life. And, he was the biggest model at the time, and his workouts were everywhere. And I started to follow those, and I probably did that for the next five years. And, over time, I continued to bring that, into my training protocols as I learned. But it's funny to look back to that point at the age of 14. And here I am, friends with Mike today, which is completely crazy for me.
So you were following Mike O'Hearn routines when you were 14?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I wasn't lifting anywhere near close to him.
No, but we hear that too.
The principles of what
Jim
he put out there.
Stepani told us a couple weeks ago that he started following old muscle and fitness routines, like straight up bodybuilder when he was like 7. Like it's just, but those things come to you, and you can't control the age at which they come to you. Regardless of the amount of weight that you're lifting. That's fascinating.
And at that point in time, I mean, other than yourself, I mean, I was truly convinced I could be just like him. Not till later was I like, well, maybe I don't have the genetics or the ability or whatnot, those doubts, but those doubts are usually cast on you by other people. Oh, you'll never do this, you'll never do that, or whatever. But at that point in time, I looked at the magazines and thought, well, I want to be like that. So that's what I'm going to shoot for.
Sure.
Mike has about 3 inches on me and about 40 pounds still, but
Hulk Hogan had that on everybody
yes.
too.
Yeah, right.
I think it's you got me going down the Hulk Hogan rabbit hole recently as well, because like when I grew up, Hulk Hogan was everything to a little kid like me, and now I feel like he's lost a ton of the luster just because he's a human being. He has this whole sordid reality TV thing going on or whatever over the last 20 years. But when we were growing up, like he was like the ultimate force for good,
Yes.
Yeah. And one of the things I remember him saying, he was always, eat your vitamins, say your prayers. But he also said, train. The first thing he said to kids, train, eat your vitamins, say your prayers. He was telling little kids to train. Nobody else was doing that in the 80s,
That's the unfortunate thing about today. The media is so big that it shows everybody's imperfections. And as a little kid, he didn't have any to me.
Right.
I just know when he was getting beat down and whatnot, he would all of a sudden stand up and he'd shake his head and shake his arms, and then he'd, take care of whoever it was that was, hurting him.
For me, there was only him and Andre the Giant. That was the ultimate. I remember staying up and watching those two. And but Hulk Hogan, he's down. Like the whole world thinks he's down, and he comes back up.
Yep. And being that comeback always,
right.
And he always persevered through that, and that was a positive example in my life. That's something that I try to encourage people that, you don't realize sometimes how you affect other people. Hulk Hogan will probably never know how he affects me or how he had, such an impact in my life. The same thing with you or anybody else. You don't realize just by the normal things that you do day to day, somebody sees that. And you may be the reason why they become who they are someday, or their biggest inspiration. They may never tell you. So, that's a big thing on how I try to live, is try to live with a positive example, promote positivity, be humble, be kind, and stuff like that, because again, you never know. And I'm fortunate in this industry that I get to meet so many of these people at expos, or they'll write me online and share their stories, which, you're very humbled by, and it's incredible to hear some of these things like, I got through my divorce because of your positivity, or some darker stories too. But, that's something that I started learning way back then.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, forgive me, Nick was filling me in on a little bit of your background, and he told me you had this horrible, horrible contest prep, and we did a video of it on our website, but for those who haven't seen it, can you just kind of tell us a little bit about that journey that you went through? He said you almost died.
Yeah. So it's kind of the whole thing's a crazy story. I was in fitness. I didn't start competing till I was 30. And I did a few bodybuilding shows, and then the physique division came out, and I thought people would make fun of me if I did it, because we wore board shorts or whatever. And I did it, loved it, and decided to do a national show, and that was in 2011, in July, USA's, and picked up a reputable coach, very well-known person that I won't ever name. And, I followed their protocol to a T, and they wanted me to burn muscle off because I was coming from bodybuilding to physique. So, I was absolutely killing myself. I basically went almost no carbs for 4 months. I was doing two hours of cardio a day. Half of that was outside, doing, HIIT or running outside. And it was that summer, it was in the 90s all summer. And then when I depleted into the contest, it was in Vegas. I remember it was like 116 degrees there. I cut out my water, carb loaded and everything. And I remember that morning I was feeling really weird. My feet were tingly and just wasn't feeling like myself. And I never made it to finals that night. My body started locking up on me. And in my head, I was like, oh, everything will be okay.
It's contest prep.
Yeah.
I'm overexerted. It kind of felt how I did after, a bodybuilding show, because I was flexing and posing the whole time. The next day I was just white, like my muscles ached and were tightening up on me. And, it kind of felt like that. So it's like, oh, I'll be fine. So the next morning I woke up and could barely get out of bed. I remember sitting in my shower because I had a bench. I was just sitting there and my legs were locked up on me and my hands were tingling. I just didn't feel right. But after a shower, I loosened up, ended up getting on the plane, got home, and I mean, getting to my car, getting home, I mean, was a task. And I had a roommate at the time, and we had dinner. And after dinner, I sat down on the floor. And I was sitting there for about 20 minutes, and I went to get up, and I couldn't get off the floor. I was literally like stuck. And things weren't like working. My arms weren't working. And I'm like, I need to go to the hospital. So they took me to the hospital, and right away in the ER, they thought I had a muscle wasting disease, was their first guess. And
Even though you had obviously tons of muscle on your body.
Yeah, and I had a great spray tan too. Put that in there. So I was sitting there, and they did all these tests, and the guy came back, and he said, your potassium level is, this, and you're supposed to be a 3.5 to a 5 to be normal, and you're like a 2.6 or 2.2 or something. I can't remember what it was exactly. But
well below normal.
It was well below. So they admitted me, and throughout the night they were taking blood draws like every hour, like three blood draws, and they were testing everything, and they were giving me fluids and potassium and magnesium and all that, and nothing was working. My body was rejecting all of it. And that next morning they basically came in, and they told me I was going to die. And to hear that, I mean, I was, 31? 31 years old, and then be told that you're going to die. And I had another doctor come in and tell me you're going to die. And I had another doctor come in and tell me I was going to die. So I got used to that at least. And
pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I was actually paralyzed. I couldn't walk or anything. My legs weren't working. My arms weren't. I was really, I was holding a lot of fluid, and they kept coming back and just saying my body was rejecting everything. And then
Did they have any sort of reason that they were giving at that point?
They were trying to figure it out. So they were working with another hospital.
But until we know, let's just on the safe side say you're going to die.
Yes. Yeah. Let's just
tell you that.
We'll just scare the hell out of you. That's what we'll do. Let's get the cortisol levels going and heart rate going.
Yeah.
So my body was basically in chaos. They ended up. I got put on insulin. My heart rate was through the roof. My blood pressure was through the roof. Magnesium, potassium, vitamin B, vitamin D were all basically stripped from my body. Then a priest came in and basically prayed over me and didn't necessarily give me last rites, but it was close enough for me. And he left. And when he left, I started blacking out and panicked. Kind of had a panic attack. And in my head, I thought, okay, I'm dying. This is it. And I thought of all the things that I hadn't done. I wasn't married, didn't have kids or anything. And all I said in my head, whether you're religious or not, all I said is, God, if I get out of here, I'll do good. That's all I said. And another doctor came in and said, well, we talked with another hospital. We think you have refeeding syndrome, which is where essentially your body's treating you like an anorexic. So when I started to eat carbohydrates and sugar, my body was spilling nutrients to create body fat. So it just spilled, and it spilled so fast that my body couldn't catch up with it. So that's what they diagnosed me with. And I've known other athletes that have had the same thing. I know another female that she came even closer than I did to dying. She spent 3 months in the hospital, and she still has to wear a heart monitor today because of it. They said because I had such a strong heart, that's partially why I made it through. So they ended up putting me in the pulmonary unit, which everybody in there is 90, just so you know. And then there was me. They put a PICC line through my bicep into my heart to give me fluids faster. And I did that for the next 6 days. I was on a special diet. I was, you name it. And, I ended up getting out of there. And when I got out of there, in my head, I'm like, I'm never competing again. This is crazy, and blah, blah, blah. And I could barely walk. I had to go to the doctor every day for tests just to test everything. And as I was walking down the street by my house, I just said in my head, I said, now what? And literally that night, Muscle and Fitness Magazine called me and said I won their online model contest and they wanted me to compete at the Olympia. And I said in my head, I'm like, okay, that's in 5 weeks. Talked to my doctors.
5 weeks.
5 weeks, yeah. I talked to my doctors, talked to my coach at the time because I'd switched to my previous coach, which I had worked with before. And then I just said, what do you think? And my doctor said, well, you can do it. We just need to monitor you. So I had to go in like every other day for those 5 weeks and get blood draws to monitor me. Wow. I couldn't exert myself for the first few weeks. So in 3 weeks, I got ready and did the model contest. There was 84 guys, and I took third out of 84. And it was my first big expo. Craziest thing I had ever seen. It was the Olympia. And first person I met was Greg Plitt, who's passed. And the thing that surprised me was Greg treated me like I was part of the group, like I was a somebody. And I'm a guy from South Dakota. Like, I haven't done anything. And he was real encouraging, and he was really great. And I was like, wow, that was such a great experience. And I literally turned and walked over to the Bodybuilding.com booth. And I had been following Bodybuilding.com for years. I've been on Body Space, I think, since like 2007. And I had been watching a lot of Jamie Eason's cooking videos at the time. So I got in line. The first person I met was Furious Pete. And we talked back and forth. Then I met Casito right after him. And then I got to Jamie, and I got to her, and she like looked at me and reached out to like hug me and thought she knew me. And I'm like Jamie Eason knows me, like what, you know? And
She knew that you'd been eating those turkey muffins.
yes, yeah. But
Smelled like turkey muffins.
yeah, she thought she recognized me, and I'm like, I don't know you. And we talked back and forth, and she just kept telling me, she's like, I really think you could be a part of this industry. Gave me her number, gave me her agent's number, and then encouraged me to do the Bodybuilding.com spokesmodel contest, which I made the finals that year and changed my life completely. I mean, I could give you the list of things since then, but everything, you know, there was groundwork laid beforehand, you know, before the hospital and all that.
Right.
But all the majority of everything I've done in fitness came after that. Almost like it happened for a reason, whether you believe in stuff like that or not. But
You had serious test beforehand, though. I mean, anybody else would have maybe just run screaming from the whole enterprise. Were you waiting for somebody to come along and say, all right, you cannot do this. This is just...
I probably would have done it anyway. You know, I was I don't know if you'd say crazy, but you know, I knew what I wanted, and you know, fear is probably the most powerful motivator I have. I have a fear of failure, based on how I grew up. You know, with a tough childhood, everybody that I cared about left me, so I was feared to disappoint people, because if I did, they'd leave, and I carried that through. Now that I'm older and I understand that, I'm not motivated by the same things. But when I was in the hospital and everything else, that's how I was motivated. So my fear of ending up there or whatever, you know, it wouldn't have deterred me. It would have probably pushed me, which it probably ended up doing anyway. But yeah, definitely a life-changing moment for me. So
So when your son comes to you one day and says, I got to do a show, because you and your wife both compete.
Right.
Dad, Mom, I'm doing a show. What are you going to say?
Well, my wife, as of now, has said she's retired. You know, she concentrates more on the industry stuff. And we've had that talk a lot. You know, even with me, she doesn't want me to compete, you know, anymore. And she said, you know, isn't being a pro good enough? And I'm like, yeah. And then in my head, I'm like, no. But, you know, with him, I think all the things that we learned about the industry or dieting or training that was wrong, those are the things that we'd utilize to protect him. You know, you see these people like me or anybody else. She and I have both been through the no calories, the massive amounts of cardio and everything else. And so many people in the industry have gone through that with terrible coaches that just run them into the ground, you know. So teaching him there's a better way, you know, whether we're counting macros with him or, you know, whatnot, you know, just making sure that, you know, he's doing it the right way, because there is a right way and there's a wrong way. And I've done it the wrong way. And I almost lost my life because of it. So would I be encouraging? Yeah. You know, if that's something he wants to do. The biggest thing with him, everybody looks at him, and because he's so big, they're like, oh, he's going to be a football player. He's going to be this or that. And before I had him, I would have been always like, yeah, that's awesome, right? And now I just want him to be a good person. So our biggest thing is we expose him to the world, and we expose him to everything: foods, culture, music, you know, everything, people, and we want him to decide. The biggest thing is we just want him to be a good person. And if competing is part of that, then we'll support it. So
now I know you speak to kids who have rough backgrounds like your own now as well. What do you tell them about what fitness can actually do? Because if you think about it, you know, there's a low barrier of entry. Anybody can do some fitness. It's a way to take control of your life when there is no control, perhaps.
You know, I was talking to somebody about this yesterday. I've spoke about 90 different engagements currently, you know, so I do it when I have time or when I'm invited to, and colleges and universities and high schools. And I talk to kids that are in lockdown, and it's funny how I relate to so many of them, you know, and I know when I walk in, I always purposely wear something that, you know, is sleeveless or revealing or whatever, because as a kid, they're like, oh my God, like this guy knows what he's talking about, you know, but the biggest thing I preach to anybody is that anything's possible. And I'm a prime example. I came from the worst background, I went through all these different things. I'm from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, the middle of nowhere, and I'm going to be 38 next week. I'm not young for this industry anyway. I've done this later. I found out yesterday I just landed another cover. I was on Iron Man's cover last month. I'm continually growing in an industry that essentially, works a lot with younger people. And if I can do it, and if I can do all these things coming from my background, my age, where I'm from, and everything else, then I should be a shining example on that they can too. And they resonate with that.
Well,
Sure.
and your story wasn't even perfect. You had that traumatic experience and still came back from that. So you had the, he's down, and
And then
To bring it back to Hulk
to bring
Hogan.
it back to Hulk.
Yep. And then I got back up.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, I'm big on the mental aspect of stuff. If you ever read anything that I write or anything like that, it's the smallest steps that add up to the biggest victories. A lot of times when you take giant leaps forward and when you fall, you don't know how you got there. I'm the culmination of all the good and all the bad that's ever happened to me. And I've gotten to where I am taking small steps. I've never had any giant leaps. And I encourage people to be respectful and appreciative of those small steps, because those small steps will take them anywhere that they want to go. Unfortunately, we're all in the world where we want it now. That's why we have drive-through windows and everything else. But if you respect what it is that you want to do enough, respect yourself, and you truly want to succeed, learn everything you can along the way. Because it's going to make you that much better. And at the same time, it's going to better equip you, because the road is never straight. Your path is never straight. It's always going to divert. And if you have that skill set leading to that, through that path, when you're diverted, you're not going to freak out and just fall off the path. You're going to be like, okay, I'm equipped. I'm ready for this. Same thing with, I was talking about leaving my corporate position, and people are like, well, why didn't you do it a long time ago? Or why weren't you doing this? Or why didn't you do that? Because all of the stuff that I learned while I was doing that, while I was competing and coaching on the side and judging and everything else, brought me to where I'm at today. And my skill set is completely different now, and it has equipped me to do the things that I want to do next. It happens in due time, because I respected the process. I left when it was time to leave. And now I'm working on, some amazing projects that 5 years ago I wouldn't have had the ability to do. I just wouldn't have been equipped with the skill set to do so.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and corporate wellness is a really interesting, sort of burgeoning field right now that you've been in for maybe longer than most people. You're there for what, five years at least, right? 7 years.
Yeah.
So what was that like, and what did you take from that as it's not the sort of career that maybe fit people think of. They think, oh, I'll be a trainer or whatever, I'll go pro.
Yeah.
But you're trying to share the gospel with a whole different clientele at that point.
Have very different clientele. I started off, I went to school for business marketing, and it's funny because I just redid my resume recently just to have it to give to people. And the guy that I worked with, in my head, I'm all fitness. And in his head, he's like, you're marketing, and with all the brands that I've developed and everything else. And I'm like, I guess I never really thought of that. He goes, so fitness is a big part. He goes, but you're this too. The thing with corporate wellness, I was originally going to open up my own gym. And the guy that owned the company I worked for, which was Poet, they're the world's largest ethanol biorefiner. They got 28 locations nationwide. It's the biggest company in South Dakota, multi-billion-dollar industry. So I got to work with a juggernaut of their industry.
With lots of people too.
Lots of people, lots of different people. And we were going to open up a gym together. And the more I reflected back on corporate wellness, the more I'm like, he didn't have a program. And I'm like, you really should have this. So what I did is I went and I studied like Google and Microsoft and all these companies that were on the forefront of that and what they were doing and how people were reacting to it and how their insurance rates changed and all that stuff. And I put together a big portfolio, and he and I were training at the time. And afterwards, I showed it to him and I said, hey, this is what I think you should be doing. And he's a very visual numbers guy, and he looked at it and he goes, all right, let's do it. And I just kind of looked around. I'm like, what? And before I knew it, I was literally on a company jet to Chicago to Life Fitness to pick out equipment. And, through that process, you're working with a completely different clientele, because they're engineers, they're scientists, they're not necessarily fitness people. Right. And I came from a complete fitness background, a gym background. So I had to really change my methodology on how I would train and how I'd communicate to work with these people.
Right. Just helping them set expectations, I would think. Like, what expectations do they come in, they say, all right, but I want to change my life, or is it like, I just kind of
I just want to move more.
And they were all different and lots of different personalities. And just like anywhere else, though, you have to continue to evolve the program. You have to continue to change it and offer new things and new classes, and have companies come in and do cholesterol checks and heart checks, and you have to have lunch and learns and bring people in to speak. You constantly have to keep them vested in your program, and you can't not change it and have that happen. So over 7 years, I continued to do that. And we had 28 locations. I ended up building mini gyms in all of those locations. In the last 2 years I was there, we worked on the nutrition part of it, worked with vendors, and put kind of like you'd see here at Bodybuilding.com. They have kind of a health market, and people could get healthy meals and whatnot. And we introduced a spouse program, where your spouses could come in for free, because it was only a corporate gym and whatnot, and those benefits were only for the people that worked there. But we moved it out to the spouses, and lots of success. The average corporate entity is looking at about 30 to 45% of their team members vested in a program and utilizing it. And we were, I think, in the high 80s, people that consistently used it day to day. And that was something I was proud of. But at the end of the day, you're building something for somebody else. You have great pride in what it is that you're doing, but it can only change so much. You can't continue to grow a program like that. You can continue to change it, but you can't continue to grow it. And for me, I'm always looking to the next thing. I kind of equate it to, you guys ever seen Napoleon Dynamite?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. Uncle Rico, talking about high school all the time. Everybody knows an Uncle Rico, right? So this guy is always talking about high school, because in his head, he thought that was his greatest moment, and he never let himself leave it. And that's where I'm different, is whether I get a new cover, whether I land a sponsorship or whatever, I appreciate it for what it is, and then I move forward, because otherwise you're going to get stuck in your best moment. And poet is a huge part of my life and who I am, but it wasn't my greatest moment. And I knew that if I didn't leave, that I would continue to just exist and do those things. And I wasn't creating anything tangible to have and hold for myself or my family. And having a son is what I think would have changed my mindset the most, because I wanted him to have everything that I didn't. And by me working there, he did, regardless. I had a great salary and everything else, but I wanted the ability also to live on my terms. And if I wanted to take him for a walk in the morning or go to the park or whatever, I could do that. If I wanted to have dinner with my family, sit at the table, I could do that. Whatever it may be, take a vacation, drive to a state park, whatever. I wanted to do that, and that was my inspiration, I would say, to leave and to work on some new projects.
Oh, that makes perfect sense.
So talking about evolution, just because I know everyone's going to be curious, fitness, or how you approached working out when you first started, how you approach working out now, and especially now that you have a son and now that fatherhood is such a big part of your life, how is that transformed?
When I was younger, it was all about being big and strong. It was about the heaviest weights I could lift, that next PR, how much I could bench, squat, deadlift. And I was just a big, bulky mess, and I had injuries all the time because I would always just push. When I started to get into competing, it changed because I had to develop a physique that looked a certain way, especially when I got into physique. I had to have a small waist, the round shoulders, big chest, So I started to change my training more to a volume, what I call angled workouts. So I hit my muscle groups at every freaking angle that I can, as many reps and sets as I can. And that's what really gave me shape. And a lot of that inspiration actually even came from Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's another person that I admire and really, really look up to. As he was a powerlifter when he was younger. And he said until he started training that way, he didn't have any shape. He was just big and strong. So I modeled that, came up with my own protocols on what worked for me, and I got to a point with the physique division and modeling and all that other stuff that I just needed to maintain. I don't necessarily need to get bigger or better or anything like that, just maintain. So that's been the last few years, is more of a maintenance protocol. That doesn't mean that I don't get in there and still train hard, but again, I for the life that I live and the things that I do, I don't need to put on 10 pounds or whatever. When he came, it became about longevity, and that means more cardio, usually being at a lighter weight throughout the year, checking my blood more often, because when you're dieting and restricted and everything, you can have thyroid and all sorts of hormonal issues, and just making sure that I'm healthy, getting enough sleep and water and my wife is I would say half vegan for the health aspects of it.
She's half vegan as well.
I'm 98% vegan.
Ovo vegan, we call it.
So she's and that came with a lot of research and study. Organic everything. Just really is careful what she puts in her body because she wants to be here for him, and she's also his food source currently. And when it comes to me, whether I'm drinking certain drinks or chewing gum, she calls them my cancer sticks because they have chemicals in them. She's on me all the time about, making sure I'm aware of what I'm putting into my body, which that consistency has made me a little more. It's something, it's kind of like the treatment of animals, for instance. Like, the crazy stuff that happens in a slaughterhouse, right, but you just kind of ignore it and you have your chicken anyway, And that's, I guess, what I've done with a lot of the things that I've consumed. And I've been more open, I would say, since he's come along to cut those things too, just to make sure that I'm here long term.
Sure. So. Now, one thing that you said when you were talking about corporate wellness that was interesting was talking about the mini gyms. I think that's kind of an interesting idea because both from a corporate perspective, but also from the perspective of somebody thinking like, do I go train in the gym or do I train at home?
Yeah.
How essential do you feel like that is, or how helpful do you think that is for somebody to either for a company to have a little mini gym at work, or for somebody to have their home gym, as opposed to all of the expense and everything that goes with having gym membership?
Having a gym at your corporate location, you're going to find, depending on the extent of it, you're going to find people. And in my head, I thought nobody really appreciated it. It wasn't a true benefit. People cared more about salary and everything else. But over time, people started to tell me from a compensation package how much it meant to them to have that, to have me as a trainer, to have me write nutrition protocols or whatever. Having the smaller gym footprint, we had to do that because the plant sizes, they're rural. So they're out in the middle of nowhere, some small town that doesn't really have a gym. So it had enough to get a good workout. The biggest thing about that is the support and the education and getting them invested in it. Because if you don't put the time into it, if you just put it up, they're not going to use it. A couple people will, but they're not. So you have to have challenges. You have to stand behind it. Like we had a flex time where people could work out whenever they wanted. They just had to either come in early, stay late, miss their lunch, whatever. And we had to support that from the top down.
Right.
The owner to the president to whoever had to support people getting in the gym. You couldn't have a manager not letting their people go down and work out, and when all the other ones did, because it put a bad taste in the mouth of the program. So if you're going to do something like that, the biggest thing is supporting it. And I can tell you that after 7 years, that was the biggest thing. If you're not supporting it, if you're not supporting them utilizing it, they're not going to. The other thing is, you talk about working out at home. It's hard for people to work out at home. That's your sanctuary. That's where you want to relax. Or you have a million things to do. You have to clean, you have to cook, you have kids and everything else. The last thing you can do is get a workout. I find when people check out, whether it be at work or at a fitness club or whatever, or just going out to the park, I stress to people, you don't need to be fancy to get a workout in. Just checking out for a little bit. It's going to help your mind and it's going to help your body. Working out at home, my wife does it a lot, but it's circumstantial. She works from home, our kids at home, so it's a bit tougher for her, but she still would prefer to get out and use a facility. So
something about that third place away from work and home still can be pretty beneficial.
Yeah, definitely.
So you mentioned challenges. What was one of the more successful challenges that you did through the corporate wellness program that you feel like really got people on board?
The biggest one, I actually took a challenge. The Bill Phillips challenge that was done here. I took his challenge from
classic.
I took that and I reworked it for our programming, and it was basically repackaged. It still carried his name and whatnot, but I repackaged for our environment and what we had, and did it with teams. And that was the biggest one by far.
Teams, so like you and 5 other people
would go through and do it together. Yep.
Okay, yeah, because we've certainly done any number of challenges and things here, and it's always very individually based. What do you feel like that the team added to it?
Holds you accountable, because you're going to have a lot of people, like I said, in that environment that don't have any fitness knowledge. They feel uncomfortable. A gym is a scary place for a lot of people. They don't feel comfortable, and they don't want to go down on their own, and so they don't. But when you are accountable for points or something else with your team, you don't want to let them down. Plus, the other team members are going to be encouraging to try to get you down there. I know for a fact that not everybody wants to work out with me because I am intimidating. No matter how much I talk to you or how nice I am to you or how encouraging, you still will look at me, as a 55-year-old female and be like, I don't want to work out. He's going to kill me.
Right.
I don't work out with him. They have a misconception in their head when I just want them to get better. I've tried, and they may have gone to a bad trainer that absolutely killed them, and that scares them. But the team environment, it builds camaraderie, acceptance, and it puts them at ease. They feel like they can be themselves. They can actually enjoy it and have fun with it. And and sometimes you would see inner group challenges where one person's challenging the other person, and it was great. So
competition still really is just there's really no substitute for it. It sounds like
competition's big, and competition for reward is bigger.
Yes.
People like a prize. It doesn't even matter what the prize is. They want something. I could give you a freaking cucumber, and they'll be like, yes. They will let
stab somebody in the back for it.
They will let that cucumber sit on their desk till that thing rots to nothing. So, yeah, prizes are big, definitely. And again, it doesn't have to be fancy. I think a lot of companies or groups try to make these prizes so big, and then they have to keep adding to that because the person's like, oh, we did that last time, because then they'll start comparing. If you're constantly raising the ante, like, well, at the beginning of the year we gave away $100, now we're going to give away $100,000 because we have to keep upping it. And
it's your trip to the moon.
Yes. And I think that you have to make them accountable to do it regardless. And periodically I would do challenges for no prize, just to remind them like why we are doing this. It's not just for a prize. It's for health, happiness, longevity, and the lifestyle of it. It's not for an iPad. So
yeah, there's a trainer that we've both interviewed named Boss Everline, who's like a celebrity trainer, and he's big on challenges all the time. And I asked him, well, what are these challenges? What's the prize? It's dinner.
Yeah.
It's always just dinner. Let's just do it for dinner, But my God, people push for dinner, Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be big. It just has to be something that they feel accomplished. When they look at it, they know I accomplished this.
Right.
And it could be anything. So anybody in the corporate world or in any gym environment or any friends just putting together a challenge. It doesn't need to be complicated. People are motivated just to be motivated. So
Well, great. Thanks for coming and talking with us, Brandan.
Appreciate it.
Where do people find you out there?
You can find me BrandanFokken.com, at Brandan Fokken on Twitter or Instagram, and Brandan Fokken Fitness on Facebook.
Pretty easy. All right.
Awesome.
Thanks very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.